Hi boys and girls, it's Show back with another video. Today we're looking to cover an England theme because it is International Week at the moment, sadly. Thought we'd have a look at the right back situation at England, Alexander-Arnold in particular, how he might fit into Southgate's plans, maybe some of the reasons of obviously why he's not really had a great look in recently, as well as another odd man out from a United perspective, WanBissaka, and obviously not quite the antithesis, but in terms of the fact that Trent Alexander-Arnold is known for his attacking prowess, one of the most creative fullbacks in world football, and then WanBissaka, known for his defensive one-on-one capabilities, both kind of unique in that sense. Whereas standard right backs, especially the ones that get into Southgate's England team, they seem to be a little bit more all-round. Not so many glaring mistakes, maybe not glaring abilities that elite abilities in any sort of particular area, and that's kind of what Southgate's been going, sort of like a safe pair of hands, rather than someone maybe that's less coachable. Looking into that, I've got a bit of just a player comparison up here for these two players. Now, this is Trent Alexander-Arnold and WanBissaka. This is this season's stats. Now, Trent Alexander-Arnold, as we know, recently has had a groin injury. He obviously missed the Euros as well because of an injury that he got in the sort of warm-up game to the Euros. So durability is just the first indicator in terms of obviously not making a mark or getting back in Southgate's plans. He'll need to keep fit for the majority of the season, especially going into the World Cup. That's obviously the crucial point. Hopefully it's a case of get the injuries out of the way now. He'll have a clean bill of health going into the World Cup in Qatar. So if you just look at his stats like early on though, big chances created, got 4 here, already 2 assists. This is after only 5 games, if we look here, compared to WanBissaka's 7. If we look at some of obviously his team play here, through balls at a really nice high 6 here, and if we just compare this to last season's stats where he had a indifferent season, and like I say, I largely attribute that down to Liverpool's centre-back situation, the fact that Van Dijk was injured, the fact that obviously Joe Gomez was injured, Matip, they had such a glaring hole there that Fabinho had to obviously drop into centre-back, meaning they're their best defensive midfielder and cover for Alexander-Arnold's forward exploits is gone. Henderson then had a crucial injury as well, and he often plays in that sort of right channel pocket area across the central midfield. We've covered that before. I mean, if we look at Liverpool's formation here, while Harvey Elliott was fit, obviously we had Henderson here popping up on the left. But if we look at his position in the City game, and this is his standard position going forward, we've got him here. This is where he typically plays, where he played last season as well. He wasn't fit as well, so this right back situation is a gaping hole. So if you go flying forward, which we know Liverpool like to do, hugely problematic. You're asking a lot over. If you remember their centre backs as well, they were very, very young. Phillips was one of them. He obviously had his struggles, and because of mobility was his biggest issue. And then really a case of just inexperience positionally, maybe in terms of knowing that area is going to be vacant all the time. So positionally, when you're going to cover, I certainly think was problematic for Liverpool last season. So his stats are misleading really, because obviously his forward stats were still fantastic. It's just defensively he was getting exposed, and you were seeing sort of the weaknesses, and those weaknesses, because they were being exposed so much, meant that Southgate probably thought, this is not someone that I can trust. It's certainly not someone that I can trust in a defensive 4. Which, if you look at England recently when they played against Poland, which is sort of their toughest test in the qualifiers for the World Cup, this is pretty much their strongest 11, or how they'd set up with the players that were fit at that time. they play 4 at the back here, and we know in the Euro final they played 5 at the back, but that was to counter Italy, and that was a tactical decision, conscious decision by Southgate, rather than something maybe generally they would set up as. And so the majority of opponents that you would face that aren't that elite level, you're going to set up like this, So in this back 4, you have Kyle Walker on the right, rather than him being inside in a back 3, where we know he can use his recovery pace, and he's actually fantastic in a central position in a back 3, definitely. And so Walker, Alexander-Arnold, you can't trust him in this situation. Now, I don't think that's true. If you look at the central midfielders that we've got here for England, we've got Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips. They're both defensively orientated midfielders. Declan Rice, more of an all-action midfielder now. He's actually developing his forward game quite a lot in terms of his ball carrying ability down the left-hand side, but predominantly a guy that gets in the faces of players, gets players before they get on the half turn. Very much going to be in around this area, covering and sweeping. We know how he likes to receive the ball, in terms of like joining a back 3 as well, receive the ball in space where he can get his head up and really actually make things tick. Calvin Phillips, on the other hand, very much in an England setup we saw in the Euros, plays much higher up, was the one that was sort of pressing defensive midfielders, allowing Declan Rice to obviously stay back here. But we know the way he plays for Leeds, it's very much shoes on the other foot. He plays very much a kind of more of a deep line playmaker role, someone that screens the back 4, receives the passes, and then unleashes those big switches out to the Leeds wingers, whether that's James, Harrison, what have you, obviously Rafinha as well. So very much shows the versatility of Phillips, the way he plays for England, but very much different to his club role. But obviously the moral of that story is they're both defensively orientated midfielders, and so why you can't afford to have Alexander-Arnold in this formation, for me, is a lack of coaching, especially if you had a Raheem Sterling in front of you like this, who we know is a good worker. It's why he gets picked, an honest worker who's going to track back. And Mason Mount obviously could be told to drift right in situations. You can tactically make it work, and I think Alexander-Arnold, in terms of his ability to obviously play those unbelievable forward passes, like I mentioned, he's currently at 6 for this season on through balls, and if we look at where he was last season, this is last season he was on 6 as well, and this is in 36 games to his 5 currently. He's big chances created 14 this season, big chances created already at 4 in 5 games. And if we look at that, if mathematically, if he's going to play, let's say roughly 35 games or something like that, he might have close to 28 big chances. It'd be an incredible pace. He has to stay fit to do that, but the way he started this season, I think he deserves a look in, really, and very much in this England setup. It's very easy for me to fill him in. It's quite simple to play midfielders. I mean, we've even got Henderson in the setup, but these midfielders are very sort of similar in terms of positionally where they place themselves. And Alexander-Arnold plays in a back 4. He played in a back 4 against Chelsea in a 1-1 draw, one of the big games here. This obviously works for Klopp. I don't see how different the setup is, really, and why it can't work for England. Do have your say in the comments, though, if there is a kind of glaring reason that you would disagree with that. But I do think it's something to do with just Southgate's lack of belief, lack of coachability, a desire to have players, like I say, that have no sort of elite skills, but they seem to be sort of just good at everything. Much a safe pair of hands at right back. Now, if we just segue on and bring this into Aaron Wan-Bissaka, I really just wanted to discuss the fact that this guy is, from a United fans' perspective, we know his limitations going forward. We know he has this kind of gangly, almost a bit like he's tripping over himself when he dribbles. Sort of tries to shimmy too much when he's dribbling and attacking the fullback. He has an aversion to play the early cross, something which, compare that to Alexander-Arnold, loves the early cross, will get in that sort of De Bruyne kind of right channel position, get played back to him, he can whip in that early ball on the money to the forward players. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he gets in that position countless times for Man United. He's countlessly a player, he's in those positions more than any other player at Man United, because the opposition don't pay much respect, so they leave him out there, and more often than not he chooses to pass up any early cross option, those options to move the ball quickly. He likes to have that sort of like trip over yourself run at the fullback a lot of the time. Sometimes it pays off, but then the end product is not there. And so, we know what his attributes are. It's all about defending. Tackles obviously really high. Always, like, he's been sort of the top 2 tackler for the last couple of seasons with Ndidi. We know what he's going to bring there. The way he deals with Raheem Sterling every time he plays him in those one-on-one matchup against Manchester City, it's amazing to watch. Like, some wingers actually fear getting anywhere near him in a one-on-one situation, because his legs come out of nowhere. He's aggressive in the challenge, a bit like how Wes Brown was. His legs come lashing through, and so a lot of players they struggle to sort of motivate themselves, I think, to get around him. Where he's weak, and this is my problem with him at right back, is he very much positionally gets exposed, and that's from either not being in a great position forward, and obviously being able to get back on the counter-attack. An example being in the latest game against Everton, that channel was just completely vacant. Admittedly, it's Fred's job to deal with it, and he didn't. But WanBissaka often leaves that right channel free for a counter-attacking winger, like Sam Maximan, Damari Gray, Almiron, pacey players like that, just to get in those areas and really sort of pull United apart. And I think we've seen countless times as well when he gets tucked into the box. This is less of an issue with Varane now at United, but with Lindelof and Maguire, he'd obviously get tucked in a lot, and I don't know whether that's a coaching thing with Solskjaer, but he'd tuck in, try and almost like protect the centre backs, and then he wouldn't have an eye for the guy behind him, and would leave him free all the time, and the cross would come over and he would be free at the back post, just to obviously usually have the decisive moment in that team's goal. And so my thoughts were, like, this guy is an unbelievable one-on-one player. His recovery pace is sensational, a bit like Kyle Walker. Like the long legs as well, they come out of nowhere, and they can make those recovery challenges if you're out of position. And so you've got to play to his strengths, and I feel like long term this is a player that I think would benefit from playing that right centre-back role for England, whether that's for United as well, if we decided to actually have a bit of a plan B and have a bit more versatility in our formation depending on our position. But I just think the way England set up against Italy, if you remember in the Euros, if we just take a quick look at this. If it decides to actually make it easy for me to find the formation. Here we are. Yeah, so here's the setup here. I just think Aaron Wan-Bissaka would just be fantastic in this position here. And this is the thing, if you did decide to play a back five like this, or if free at the back with the wing backs pushed on like this, you could easily see an England setup in the future that could actually feature Wan-Bissaka and Alexander-Arnold on the same side. Alexander-Arnold, Kyle Walker, perfect. Wan-Bissaka, Kyle Walker, perfect for these positions where they're going to get in this right pocket. They can do a lot of one-on-one defending once they have to protect. Like for example, if an Insigne decided to move down into that area. If, for example, an Insigne, Lorenzo Insigne, if he decided to kind of move round, position himself here, we've got Alexander-Arnold. He's camped over here. He's just jogging back slowly, trying to get his position back in here. I just very much think that, in this situation, having a pacey, physical defender like a Kyle Walker, like a WanBissaka, would be so effective. And obviously, if in a situation where you're all up on a corner, you're all over here, and he's literally going to be the last man back. So let's say you've got, Maguire's gone up, you've got Stones, he's gone up over there. They've all pushed up, and you might have Kyle Walker, just in this position here, showing that recovery pace like he did against Germany in the Euros. WanBissaka can do that job as well. He does that for United all the time. I just think, these are the kind of things that you need to think about, especially when you've got so many dynamic right backs. I do think there is a position for WanBissaka in an England setup, just like I think obviously there's definitely a position in the England setup for an Alexander-Arnold. And then to close really on this video, if we just take a look at England's right back 11, looking at this here, put your thoughts in the comments. Who are your sort of favourite right backs? Maybe who are your standout ones? Who do you think maybe has an England future? Maybe it's not the Qatar World Cup in next year, but maybe the next Euros, for example. Who do you think's an emerging player there? Looking at this setup here, I think obviously we know Walker, aging force now, getting older. Trippier, we know that definitely. Reece James is an interesting one. Can he stay fit during this period of time, sort of the next 2 to 4 years? Could he really cement himself in that right back position? This is an example of what I'm talking about, a bit of like a safe pair of hands. He's physically robust, a bit like Luke Shaw, has a bit of a turn of pace, not like outstandingly quick, and has a bit of a passing range as well. Has been known to play in a bit of midfield, so certainly a multi-purpose player. And that's the kind of player that Southgate likes. And if Southgate was going to be manager long term, I think you could see Reece James cementing himself as the outstanding right back for England. Whether I agree with that, like I say, I don't think so. I think you can get Alexander-Arnold in this team, who is the most talented England player. Definitely, certainly in defence, but I think you can even argue that he's, in terms of what he brings for Liverpool, he's one of the most outstanding talents in the country from all positions, and certainly as a right back in world football. And so you need to be looking how you can get these players in your team, and it's not a case of forcing them in your team. That's the thing. You don't want a situation where it's like getting in Scholes, Gerrard and Lampard, and you have Scholes out left inexplicably, and even though Gerrard, for example, is more of a physical runner and could definitely do a better job out on the wing. You don't want to shoehorn them in where it's at the detriment to the way your team plays, and obviously the detriment in terms of the confidence of those players. But I think you need to be more tactically astute, and we saw developments of that with Southgate in terms of the fact that against Germany, Italy set up more of a back five than obviously teams that you'd expect to beat, like Ukraine in the quarter-final. He'd set up a back four and be a bit more expansive. So there is a blueprint there, but the difference is you just got to teach obviously defensive midfielders to do the right, to cover the right times on your fullbacks. And I think you see the way Luke Shaw played last season, the reason why his numbers started to go through the roof, chances created and things like that, is because he was way more on the front foot. They were way more aggressive in his positioning, and if you can fit him in on your left hand side, why can't you fit Alexander-Arnold on your right hand side? A la Robertson and Alexander-Arnold for Liverpool. So yeah, they're my thoughts on it. What do you think? WanBissaka would make a good right sort of channel centre back in a back three. I think that's where his future lies, maybe for Man United as well, actually. And yeah, do you think Alexander-Arnold is the outstanding right back, and he should definitely get in the England setup, England 11, as soon as possible? Yeah, so thanks a lot for listening. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.